So that rich man was dressed in purple garments and fine linen. They say that was the first century way of saying that he wore Armani suits. It says he dined sumptuously each day. He only went to five-star restaurants. And Lazarus was at his door, longing to eat the scraps that fell from the rich man's table. That was his opportunity to turn his losses into gain. The crumbs, the scraps, would become to his advantage. But St. Augustine says, the covetousness of the rich is insatiable. It blinds to the needs of others. The rich man, they say, treats his dog better than he treats Lazarus. He gives the dog his scraps. And today they say Lazarus is still at the gate. Like Pope Francis talks about the globalization of indifference. The globalization of indifference. Lazarus in our culture would be the unborn. The culture has more compassion for animals than it does for the unborn. And woe to the complacent in Zion, those who feel secure. That first reading from Amos says, lying on beds of ivory. If we don't think about God, everything else ends up being about me and my own comfort. Let's see. Like we say, we leave the wounded, the needy outside the gates, like the rich man in the gospel. We leave Lazarus outside the gate of our hearts to fend for themselves. They say excessive concern for our own comfort and the things of this world inevitably leads to neglect of God and neighbor. Like we say, that is the affliction of our culture. The rich man treats his dog better than he treats Lazarus. And because the dog gets the scraps. And the beast has more compassion toward Lazarus than the rich man. The dog licks Lazarus, the sores of Lazarus. Okay, the dog seems to have more sympathy. Okay, and like we say, as a culture, we've enshrined in law our compassion for animals and our indifference to the unborn. Like, what's the penalty for destroying a bald eagle's egg? Well, the answer is it depends on what state you live in, ranging anywhere from $10,000 to $250,000 and 1 to 5 years in prison. The culture, we say, is kind of out of contact with reality. To quote George Orwell, we now have sunk to a depth at which the restatement of the obvious is the first duty of the intelligent man. Sometimes we forget what life is about. Like there's that story of Yogi Berra and Hank Aaron. When the Milwaukee Braves played the Yankees, Hank Aaron came up to bat, and Yogi liked to talk to the batters before they were hitting. He would distract them. So he told Henry, you're holding the bat wrong. You got to be able to read the label. Okay, you're holding the bat wrong. You got to be able to read the label. Well, Henry Aaron hit the next ball over the fence, and he rounded the bases, stepped on home plate, and he said to Yogi, I didn't come up here to read. Okay, I didn't come up here to read. Well, sometimes we forget what we're here for. St. Thomas Aquinas makes the distinction between the right of ownership and the proper use of things. We all have a right to ownership, whether it's by work or by inheritance. But the use of things is first of all for the common good, okay? For the good of all. That G.K. Chesterton says, it's only when I let go of this world that I learn to love and enjoy it. It's only when I can let go of this world that I can love and enjoy it. They say that the safest vault in which we can deposit our goods is to place them in the hands of God. he who is good to the, he who lends to the poor, well, he who gives to the poor lends to God. God becomes his debtor. So we pray for that grace to recognize Lazarus on our doorstep and to act with compassion toward him.